Oh boy.
And this is going to be the true test of if it's going to start.
Yeah, so we either just fucked it. So what that tells me is the high pressure oil pump is not working. And I just don't know. This has been such a journey. Let me show you the fix here.
Back in 2019, we spent the year building out our schoolie. After the build was done, we sold our house and traveled for a full year. Following that year of travel, we started to crave building again and getting something 4x4.
Okay, so what we just did is filled up this oil filter here with oil, to just motor oil. If you were to not fill this up, you would get a dry start and you could damage some parts. So if you can, always put your fill your filters with oil, and then what you do is take a little bit of the oil on your finger and put it around the O-ring, and that will help you next time you change your oil to get it back off. Right here, so you can just hand it to me. This is also where your block heater is put, so I always just tighten these hand tight because they always seem to like kind of tighten over time also. So now we have no oil in the motor, but we have oil in the filter here. I still need to tighten down our torque converter bolts, and this is going to be in my way for an impact now, so I'm going to have to do it all by hand. So we take this big old bucket. So now there's already some oil in the motor. Before I put the valve covers on, I dumped a bunch of oil all over the valves and rockers and all that jazz.
You think it's going to take almost the 5-gallon bucket?
Yeah. I'm just gonna let that rest there for right now. I always just check the oil with the dipstick. Basically what this does is it just goes down into your oil pan. This, in my opinion, is the best way to do it rather than like measurement, putting like so many quarts in. If you could get the dipstick in. Oh boy. Getting ready to put the turby in. So I ordered new, I have no idea what they are, but they're for your exhaust thingy doodads that you crush down. So that's where that goes. And now we have this other one here. This one's all broken and crushed. So I just ordered new ones, and they slide on over the top. The bottom ones down there, they're just a press fit. Oh, that's a good noise. Some schmuck on these.
Copper schmuck?
Copper schmuck. Schmuck has been applied. So, why we only have one off? Are you close enough? Can you get the shot?
Yeah.
It's because this is our turbo manifold. First, place the turbo in, then I can place this up against it, and then put in that tube. I think, something like that. I'm gonna make sure everything's loose before I tighten everything down to make sure I have it all correct. I'm back, Jack. And now we need to get this ring here set here. So we need to go find an O-ring. I think the previous guy put on just make your own gasket beaker. So this is definitely not ideal.
Oh, that smells delicious.
That's crazy to think that that's how like the motor looked. Everything in the motor was like that. Disgusting. Set it there. So this is something that the motor doesn't normally come with. Is this here. So this is called a crossover. I think they call it a deadhead kit. This here, where these little plugs are, they fill with oil, and that your high pressure oil pump feeds that. This is supposed to create even oil pressure, because now it also crosses over and feeds, like equalizes all the oil pressure through all the cylinders, I guess. We're gonna go ahead and slap this turbine on there. Just slap it on. These ones have to be bolted to the pedestal beforehand. Oh, yum. And then you just drop it down in place. Whoa. Reinforcements inbound. Grandio news, Chapman. All right, we can stick this puppy on now. Oh, it's gonna go on. Maybe I should have done what I said I was gonna do. I'm gonna make sure everything's loose before I tighten everything down. I'm gonna need 8 millimeter. This is our intake side. So right here is where our intake tube goes, which is this guy here. We have a new one now. And I don't understand why it's so tight in there, actually. So basically when we do the snorkel, we'll just hook up to right there. So it'll go tube there and then out to here.
Hint, hint, we want to add a snorkel.
Hopefully, but it's gotta be custom made. No one makes snorkels for these, go figure. Had to get a van. For these things to crank over, they have a safety where they have to be in park. And so you have to hook up like a cable to the park position sensor. And I was like, okay, I got it, should start now, or like should crank over, didn't crank over, right? Weird. Well, I realized I didn't plug in the other side of the cable up to the main harness. I just left it out. So I plugged it in and then it cranked right over. I'm gonna see if I can start it. I have no idea if it will start or not, because as you can see, it's not actually fully bolted together, not fully like good to go, and I've never really started something like this. Normally I always bolt everything together, get all the radiator and get everything, double check everything, then start it. But I want to make sure, because I pulled this motor all the way apart, before I put everything back on, it'll at least start or try to start. I have my scanner up there, that's also like a gauge readout, so I'm going to turn that on and turn it to the mode where I can see the most amount of things. And I'm going to be checking for my oil pressure. Mainly that's the number one thing I'm concerned about, but also like injector pulse width, RPM, fuel pressure. I think that's about it.
Charging up the battery.
Yeah, this is like a jump box, so I actually have it like jump starting it. Might need to just leave that charger on for a while. We're also going to need to build oil pressure, so chances are this first start's going to take quite some time, because I mean we're going from every little nook and cranny has absolutely no oil in it. Well, some oil because I added it, but not pressurized oil.
If you didn't hear, Lance said he's gonna double check his wiring because those gauges aren't reading.
Seen this. These are apparently tubing benders, so you slide it over the tube and then you can just bend it and it prevents it from kinking. I thought this would work because it already had flares, but they didn't have the size I needed, and I thought it only needed fitting on one side, but it needs it on two sides. So what I'm going to do is cut off the length over here, cut off the length over here, slide on my fittings, my end caps, and then flare them out with my flare kit here. So we can slide our collar back up, and now we have a flared fitting, and then we'll take it back into the bender and do our final bend. Might have to take off this whole pulley, I'm not sure yet. So it connects down here on the manifold, so that's why it's this weird shape. So what I'm actually gonna do is pull it off of this and see if I can feed it down, connect it, and then connect it up top after. So the thing about hard lines is there's a bit of finesse to them because they're hard. Go figure. It matches so nicely in the contour. So I ended up cutting, there's a cross member that goes right here, and I ended up cutting it out to pull the motor out, and it made my life so much easier. I was kind of debating it, but then again, I kind of weld, so I know how to weld. So I don't think it's an issue. I cut it out, I'll weld it back in afterwards, but what's awesome is I can stand here like this, not having to bend over and hurt my knees, and I can get all the way in there, and it made getting it out and in way easier. So this is their fuel bowl here, where a fuel filter is, so I unscrew this, pull our fuel filter out. I went to the gas station and I filled up a water bottle with diesel. Now what I'm gonna do is just pour it in. Hopefully that's enough diesel in there. So we'll put our filter on. Oh man, I hope I don't have to go back to the gas station. Okay, so now we can try starting it. So that's priming the fuel filter housing. By priming it, I'm literally putting diesel in there so it can create a vacuum in the fuel lines and do the whole fuel system. So now we'll hook up our batteries. Like, so hopefully now it works. It's probably not going to start right away. Should want to crank over. Should take quite some time to start because, I mean, there's no fuel in anything. There's no oil in anything, so I just hooked up some cables to it. I'm gonna crack some fuel lines, look and see if they have, like if any fuel's spraying out of them.
Lance has a reader.
Yo. So I'm just gonna pull up the vehicle and see what I can read off of it. See if like I can clearly tell something's not working if it's not reading that sensor.
Babe, there's a ton of fluid pouring out.
What?
There's fluid pouring into that oil pan.
Oh. Okay, thank you.
Is that diesel?
Yeah. It's actually kind of a good sign because that means
It's moving in there.
well, and we have a fuel leak, so it wouldn't start with a fuel leak because it wouldn't build pressure.
How'd you know to put the oil pan right there?
Not my first rodeo. Fuel lines are leaking pretty good. Unfortunately, we're gonna do the e-fuel kit anyways, and that's part of the reason, so that way you don't have leaking fuel lines. It's almost like maybe I should just keep bolting everything else on to order that kit. Let's see what we got here. Gee whiz.
That's what we've been waiting for.
Woo! So I went ahead and ordered a kit where I was talking to this guy on the interwebs and he was saying, oh, just make your own kit. Well, I found this kit was like $100 more expensive and I didn't have to do any research. So this is an e-fuel kit and this kit actually comes with instructions. It comes with all of our wiring. That's pretty neat. So this is from 444 Fab. So this is hopefully why the van's not starting. Not all these lines and stuff, but we have a really bad fuel leak. Very exciting. It's been pretty easy. I mean, easier than I thought. I was a little overwhelmed because there's just so many parts and components to it, but once you like assemble the filter housing, it gets rid of a ton of parts. And then once you assemble the like actual hoses that go to where your fuel lines go into your heads, gets rid of a ton also. So today we hopefully will finish it. So we're gonna get these fuel filters mounted up today. We're gonna do some overhead drilling, which is probably my favorite thing in the world. Getting all those chips just raining down on you. Then we'll bolt this up, make sure it fits and works, and we want these filters tucked up nicely so that way they don't get caught up on a rock or anything like that. They'll actually be higher than our rock sliders, so that'll be perfect. Once we get that all done and situated, we'll go ahead and pull it back off, just take all these components off, and then paint the raw metal here. I think I'm just gonna do a truck bed or like a truck undercoating. These push lock fittings are freaking awesome. I've never used them before. And they look just like barbed fittings, but these ribs here are like sharp almost. So once you push them on, these sharp ribs like dig into the rubber and it can't come off. So these you actually don't even need to use hose clamps or anything on. Oh, you feel me? Whoops.
That sounded different.
Yeah, I don't think there was any fuel getting to the motor when I did that, because one, I think I might have had the line switched around.
Yeah.
I might have had the return line going to the intake side. and vice versa. I'm not sure though. This gauge here, you can't see it, but on the back side there's a gauge. That's what I was looking at.
That's from our new fuel system. I'll go on the other side.
This is like our fuel pressure, and we're after about 60 to 70 psi. And this screw on top here adjusts how much pressure there is. So I need to read the little instructions on how much to twist that. These motors here, they have a return, so the fuel goes from the tank to the motor, and it kind of just floods the motor. Just gives it as much as fuel as possible, and then the fuel that it doesn't use returns back to the gas tank. So that's what I was saying, how I could have the lines hooked up backwards.
Then Lance also had to find a new spot for the fuel filters. All of these videos of like the van trying to start come from this way because it's me running over here to catch it if it does. It sounds a lot different, babe.
It does, huh?
Should it be cranking right now?
Well, there's no turbo on it, which might make it sound different. No, I don't. It's not supposed to start right now. I'm just trying to see the fuel pressure.
Okay, so the van is coming back together this morning, and this is gonna be the true test of if it's gonna start. He's getting the turbo back on, and a lot of parts just put back together.
So this is actually the last thing that needs to go on.
Oh, and then it's test time?
And then we try to start it. Yep-a-rooney.
And of course, after this, there's still a ton of other stuff that needs to go on, fluids that need to be added, but you're just turning it until it basically lugs and starts, and then turning it right off,
yeah,
right?
So the motor should start right now, in theory. But we have no radiator, no coolant, nothing hooked up front, and the transfer case isn't hooked up. Nothing like that. So the idea is we put this in and start it up. Once we get it started, if something sounds awful or like a head blows off or something crazy because I messed up rebuilding it, we don't have to pull off all of the coolant, all of the transmission, all of that stuff. We have a lot less to pull out of the actual van. Okay, so Lance needs 2 fuses. He needs this fuse, and he actually needs the fuse connector to this. Since I'm his errand runner, we'll go get those. So they didn't have the big one, so now we have to go to O'Reilly's. Yeah, so we either just fucked it. It's still gonna probably take a while to start because we still have no oil, like real oil pressure in anything. It should start. Like it shouldn't need to be cranked 1,000 times to start. And we have oil in it. And making sure no oil's coming out where it shouldn't be. Due to like, you know, a mess up or something. Let me know if you see any oil pouring out of like underneath this.
I didn't see any. Lance decided he's going to switch out the IPR valve, and that's something he can get to.
Yeah, we put a new one on, and I know by experience that sometimes new out of the package, they still don't work. And we have a different solenoid that I'm pretty sure I know works. So we'll slap that on there and then try it, and hopefully that's the issue. So, see here, this is a picture. Just how this line's here and then goes there, and then the further outline goes there. I have it where this one goes there and that one goes there, which I think is important.
I mean, I'm sure. Everything's important.
Yeah.
They're tiny
So,
pins.
I'm gonna go change those around. I'm just gonna make it let it charge up for a bit. Okay, so I went to Napa and I got this tool made. You can order these tools, but I got it done right now and it actually costs the same. So basically it's a hose with one fitting that plugs into our high pressure oil pump lines and then to a gauge that goes up to 600 PSI. These motors need 500 PSI to start minimum. That's why this gauge goes up to 600 and this is the only one they had. Basically it's hooked up and then I have this block off here. So the other high pressure oil pump line is blocked off. So all of the pressure has to go to this gauge, and when I'm cranking it, there's no pressure. We're not seeing 1 PSI, nothing. So what that tells me is the high pressure oil pump is not working. I did rebuild it, and maybe I did it wrong. So like I refurbished it. I didn't actually rebuild it. So I'm gonna go ahead and take that out and check. The downside to this is I have to drain the oil and take all this off right here. This gives me a lot of hope because this is something that if this isn't making 500 PSI, the motor will 100% not start.
That sounds so much different, like peppier.
It wouldn't start, but we just maxed out the gauge. The oil pressure gauge went boom and slammed. So that means we have enough pressure. Before we had no pressure on that gauge. So now I just hook up the oil lines, and then I was like, oh, why isn't it starting? Duh, I have the oil lines undone. There's no way it would have started. See how this gauge looks like it's on 0? It went all the way around.
That's awesome.
So it's actually not on 0, it's on over 600.
So is oil going to spray when you do that?
I don't know.
Probably.
But it's a new day and we're gonna try some stuff here. So like I was saying, I went and got this gauge made up. I'm pretty certain it's faulty, and the guys at Napa said it's faulty too because they went ahead and just ordered a new one for me. If you can see here, it's on the wrong side of this needle. What happened is when I hooked it up and I think it got the slightest amount of pressure, it just went whoop and now it's stuck there. So I have no idea if the high pressure oil pump is even working. I thought it was because this gauge went around like, sweet, I got plenty of pressure. But this gauge might have been completely wrong. So with that being said, a new gauge is going to come in tomorrow. So I'm not going to actually do too much troubleshooting today because let's say it is the high pressure oil pump. I'm doing all this crazy amount of work for a high pressure oil pump issue, which is very common on these. And considering I did tamper with the high pressure oil pump, it could be bad. So hopefully you can see this here. So this was the old plug. These valve covers actually came with the plug, and if you look here, see that little bottom piece right there? It broke off, so it can't clip in anymore. Luckily, they come with pigtails. That's what they call these, pigtails with the valve covers. So I'm just placing this one, and there's actually a melted one I found in the back on that side that I'm gonna replace as well.
Lance just installed the low pressure oil pump, so...
Yeah, so we have a higher volume low pressure oil pump. It's like a 10 tooth rather than a 14, so it pushes more pressure. So the low pressure oil pump is right behind here. It's real easy to get to. With the radiator and everything off, that's one of the reasons I did it right now. And we weren't seeing pressure in this reservoir right here. So what I've done is I hooked up our gauge that I was testing the high pressure oil pump with to a reservoir, and I'm cranking from the inside and looking for that to rise. And I'm looking for about like 70 PSI or so. Yesterday I wasn't getting like any pressure from this, and this level here what kept dropping, so that's what led me to the low pressure oil pump. So what I went ahead and did is swap that out. We filled this reservoir all the way up with oil. We're full of oil in here, and we're gonna go ahead and, sorry, I had a hair in my mouth. I'm gonna crank it over, check this. If this is reading good, I will take this gauge off and put it on the high pressure oil pump hose and check the pressure on the high pressure oil pump. And if we're reading like 500 PSI, then I'll hook it up and we should be good to go. And if it's not reading 500 psi, let's say like 200, then it leads to the high pressure oil pump being bad. The gauge didn't move at all. So, still not getting pressure. Curious if this gauge is just not sensitive enough, because it is a 0 to 1,000. I'm gonna hook this up to the high pressure oil pump line and we'll see what we get there. Okay, so we now have this reservoir. It's refilling, so I'm really hoping that the low pressure oil pump was the issue. I just checked the pressure out of the high pressure oil pump and we had good pressure, which means everything should work. And if it doesn't work, it's got to be a fuel issue or a timing issue, because we definitely have oil pressure and like good injector oil pressure, which this isn't like a gas motor. The high pressure oil pump runs these injectors. That's why this has been such a big issue, is because the injectors are hydraulically driven, and this motor in particular uses engine oil as a hydraulic fluid to push these injectors open and close. And if you don't have 500 psi of injector or oil pressure out of the high pressure oil pump, your injectors won't fire off because their springs are just that heavy, I suppose. So I'm starting to get butterflies in my chest, and let's just really hope. I'm seeing some oil coming out the bottom side here, which is good because we might be having oil spitting out of the top of our out of our injectors now, which we didn't have because we didn't have enough oil pressure. So let's give this a test, and my chest's fluttering. Let's hope it starts. Alright, let's try replace the cam position sensor. Try cranking it for a while. I haven't done an injector buzz test. I think that's my next step here. Okay, so I think what might be going on here, down to like the last couple of things. So I got my computer out here. We're gonna do that injector buzz test, but check out this. Look how much fuel is leaking out of the water pump here. Like, I mean, it's bad. That's a lot of fuel. So basically those injector cups I put in are pouring diesel out. So maybe all of those cups, like all four, so we're only really getting fuel in 4 cylinders, you know, one whole side, basically the side that I didn't replace those injector cups. And if that's the case, I don't think it would fire up. So I'm gonna go ahead and order some nice injector cups, get those injector cups put in here. I'm actually gonna just do all 8 while I'm at it. And I just don't know. I should be able to do those injector cups inside here. Like with it in here, I don't have to pull off anything. Put in new ones, and I'm gonna get like actual good ones that are machined rather than those terrible cast ones. But I mean, I guess at least we're catching it now. I'm doing an injector buzz test here, and we just got a reading. Cylinder 4 injector circuit low, cylinder 2 high, 2 low side fault, cylinder 4 high, 2 low side fault. So I'm gonna run the test again. So what we did right there is what you heard is it ran all the injectors at once. So we're getting the same results here that we did last time. And then it went through from cylinder 1 through 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. We basically listened to see if one of those injectors sounded weird, which they are all sounding right. So what I can do here is I'm just gonna go through and do a couple of diagnostics. So it's going through and it's gonna test all of its electronics and tell me if something's wrong here. We know it's reading right because injector control pressure air, I have that unplugged because it just defaults and these motors will start with it unplugged. And then that's just the way you don't have to get a whole new ICP sensor. So again, we're running the cylinder 4 and cylinder 2 we're getting high to low side fault. Possible causes: open injector circuit, damaged injector, air-assisted injector control circuit range performance. So that cylinder 4 and cylinder 2 are definitely a concern, and that's on one side, so that would be on this side of the motor, which is where I actually replaced this this pigtail. So maybe we'll do some ohm testing and making sure this pigtail I wired properly. So those batteries died on me. Well, these batteries, they're dead now from just cranking. Knowing those two injectors there aren't doing too hot, and after doing a bit of research, it could be like a hydro problem, meaning that those injector cups could be so bad and have such a bad seal that that's the issue. I'm gonna get those injector cups ordered in, and then we're gonna go from there. The nice thing about this van is there's so much work to do on it that I can just get my mind off of doing this and just go inside and start working on the inside, because regardless, the inside's gotta get worked on. I don't know if you can hear or see, but I've been feeling pretty under the weather lately. So I'm working on the motor. Surprise. It's something I can do slowly and still get things done with, so that's why I'm doing it. The hydraulic problem can be from these injector cups. They're like cheap, poopy Amazon injector cups. So they're not sealing correctly. Yeah, we're gonna just take our valve cover off here. So to change these injector cups, you need this tool. So on these motors, if you're doing it yourself, you can get I recommend Riff Raff Diesel. They sell these brass injector cups, or they sell stainless steel injector cups, which I'm using, just so hopefully I don't have any issues in the future with these. They're very nice quality. I'm really happy with them, and they're like $30 more than these brass ones. But you can actually rent these tools from them. I think it's like a $70 rental fee, where the Amazon injector cups I bought were these tools plus the injector cups for like 90 bucks. Should have known from the price that they were going to be bad, but whatever. At least I have the tools now. So I go figure, I had to get creative with this too. I cut off the wings on it, so that way it could sit down in the cylinder. So I put the new injector cup on this guy here, put it in the cylinder, and I kind of just like push it down by hand. And then these two bolts go where the retainer nuts go for the actual injector. I went out and bought new ones, so that way I don't bend the actual retainer bolts. Bolt that down, and then you just tighten this top down. And I think you're supposed to do 10 foot-pounds, so I'm gonna do this today.
It is August 18th. We started this way back in July.
Oh, I hope it starts. Oh, I'm such an idiot. I drained all the oil out of it, and I forgot to put oil in. That's why it's been... I'm an idiot. Well, I guess I gotta fill it up with oil. I put oil in it, filled up a reservoir here, so now we should have oil pressure. It should take a little cranks to get oil pressure everywhere, especially since I was cranking on it with no oil pressure, or no oil in here, so all the oil's out of the lines. Check it out.
1 second.
It's... Holy crap. This has been such a roller coaster, and I swear this whole time it's probably been fuel pressure. I had a feeling that I wasn't getting fuel pressure, and then I messaged a friend asking him if, because he put an e-fuel kit on, asking him if this fuel pressure regulator, if when it wasn't running, it would not get fuel pressure. And he's like, oh yeah, that's normal. Well, I went through and tested things, and it definitely wasn't getting fuel pressure. It's not running on its own. Like I have to keep cranking it, but that might just be it's still building oil pressure. But
gotta get out of the way.
Oh, it's not getting enough fuel. This whole time it was probably just the fuel pressure. I mean, those injector cups need to be replaced too.
That's exciting.
It blew a ton of oil out the exhaust right there, but that could be oil that was trapped in the cylinders or from when I just did the injector cups, or it could be I rebuilt the turbo incorrectly. I don't know, it kind of seems like I'm doing everything pretty good. So far, everything I've done is pretty good, except for the fuel pressure, I guess. I'm basically sucking out of a gas can right now because for some reason we're not getting fuel out of the tank. We're not getting any fuel from the tank to the motor, and I'm not sure why. So we'll figure that out now. Yeah, I dropped it to take a look at the fuel sump, and I found a bunch of fuel parts in there that I pulled out, but other than that I don't really need to do anything. So I'm gonna put it back up now. So we need to figure something out actually. Right there.
We could do the strap method.
Oh, that's a good idea. Here, maybe just toss it around the top.
Strap method.
Designed and perfected by Lance and Alan.
Patent pending.
Because the transmission's hooked up but no lines are, it builds transmission pressure and shoots transmission fluid out. This has been such a journey, man, because it's like, I don't know why, or I mean, I know it's my fault, but it seems like everything I did to it, it was like one thing wrong. Like I literally, let me show you the fix here. So this wiring harness here was an issue to begin with, and I replaced it with these pigtails, right? Here, let me pull this out just to show you. Can you see here?
Yeah.
So you can see I rewired it. Well, I had this yellow wire and this brown wire swapped here, these two. So I swapped those, and that was the issue. To get to that solution though, I pulled out every single injector, inspected all of the wiring harness, put all the injectors back in, inspected the turbo because it was leaking oil. Like I did a lot of stuff just to figure that little thing out. And then I went and tried starting it, and it idled amazing. Because the issue was, it would crank over and start, but you had to stay on the throttle and it would run like misfire and run like crap. But now it's running great. We have no codes we're reading. This is like a Snap-on computer, but it's a knockoff brand. So yeah, it made this amazing, and now it starts and runs, and I can go ahead and mount everything up, and we can be driving this sucker down the road. And it's been a long journey. It's been like a month or two. Well, it's time to mount the rest of these parts up and hit the road after the rest is done. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Thanks for following on this crazy journey.